My name is Robert Campbell, and I'm one of the co-authors of Beyond, which is a new course for teenagers. And in Italy, Beyond is being published by Mondadori, and it's being published in January next year, and it's a 3-level course for, hope I get this right, secondo grado de secundaria. Did I get that right? Good. And it takes students from A2 level up to B2. And one of the key features of the course is its focus on life skills. In fact, in every unit of the course, there's a life skills lesson. And we'll be looking at a couple of examples of those later on. But I thought we should start by answering the question, what are life skills? And so I asked Google, what are life skills? And Google told me to go to the Macmillan Life Skills website by coincidence. And so I looked for a definition there. And that's what I got. Okay, so it sounds like life skills are an important thing to teach students. But I think probably you're all teaching life skills anyway. I think you probably all do pair work activities and group work activities, and those, they all use important life skills like these ones listed here. And apart from pair work and group work, you also have the day-to-day running of the classroom and getting students to organize their time, organize their work. Again, these are all important life skills. But probably you don't really focus on those as being life skills. And what we're going to look at today is how you can make life skills more explicit, systematic, and comprehensive. So, I'm going to start by taking a quick look, an overview of life skills at secondary and why they're important. Then we're going to look at some practical ideas of how you can just add a few little life skills focuses to your classes that you're teaching at the moment. And then we're going to be a bit radical and look at how you can base a whole lesson around life skills and really do something very interesting with language. Okay, well, before we start, I want to ask you a question. And this is actually a question. Each week, I listen to a podcast from NPR radio from the States. It's called Pop Culture Happy Hour. And all it is just a group of friends in the States, and they sit around talking about new films, things they watch on television, sporting events, just anything that interests them. And they have this segment at the end of the podcast in which they answer this question. What's making you happy this week? And it might be a new film, it might be something that they're doing, it could be anything. And just for 30 seconds, I would love it if you could turn to the person next to you, and if you've never met them, just say, hello, how are you? And then ask and answer this question. What's making you happy this week? Okay? Thanks. If you want to know what's making me happy, apart from holding a microphone, it's being back in Rome. And curiously, the last time I was in Rome was in 1967 on a family holiday, and I was a bit young to appreciate it, so I'm hoping I'm going to appreciate it a bit more this time. But this is an example of a very short, quick life skills task that you could do to start off a lesson. You know how often students come into your class feeling really miserable and down, and they've got a bad attitude. Maybe they got problems at home, or maybe the last lesson didn't go so well, or maybe they argued with a friend in the break. And if you do something like this, starting a class with a question like this, it just promotes a bit of positive thinking. It makes the students think, oh, well, maybe there are just some little things in life that are okay, even though the big things are terrible. And apart from making the students feel better, it also makes them feel a bit more engaged with the class after they've sort of feel a bit more positive about life. Now, unfortunately, positive thinking and self-esteem suffer a lot when making that bridge from childhood through to adolescence. And self-esteem seems to drop a lot from the ages of 9 through to 13. And one of the results of low self-esteem is a lack of empathy. And getting older, this report says that young people today are 40% less empathetic than college kids from 30 years ago. And in fact, the biggest jump has been in the last 9 years. So it's something that's sort of become more of a problem quite recently. Now, there are lots of reasons for this. There are obviously the changes that we go through when we become teenagers, to the brain, to the body, to our states of mind. But there are all these other outside influences as well, a lot of which are very new. Media, for example, and in particular social media. There are some studies that show that the more time teenagers spend on social media, the lower their self-esteem is. There are also more pressure to succeed at schools. I'm not sure if the case is true here, but in a lot of countries, schools now publish league tables and results and are more competitive to try and get students to succeed more. There are all the other problems, globalization, political uncertainty. They all make life quite stressful for our students. On the other hand, teenagers have lots of positive skills, and that's one of the reasons why I think we love teaching them so much. They're really good at multitasking, which I'm not. I find it more than enough to speak and use this at the same time. They're very social, although they tend to be perhaps more social online these days than face-to-face. They're incredibly creative. I'm sure you know that from the work you sometimes get from your students, but also things that teenagers are doing online and blogs, those kind of things. They know about a lot of things, partly because of the internet as well. Although maybe they don't know too much in depth. Maybe they just know about a lot of different things. And because they use a lot of digital devices and they use the internet and social media, we tend to call them digital natives. And we tend to think that maybe in that area we don't really have anything to teach them. But I think that's misleading. If you look at the results of this survey, this was part of a survey, and they interviewed 60,000 students in 21 different countries about being a digital native. And what they discovered was that although almost 90% are confident in finding information on the internet, look, only 2% use critical thinking when they're actually finding that information. So there's obviously quite a lot that we can still teach them in that area as well. So in Beyond, our thinking on life skills is also comes from a lot of work going on in Europe, and I can never remember what OECD stands for. the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and they released a report 2 years ago which looked at proficiency in 21st century skills as an essential complement to knowledge in the workplace. And the essence of the report is really, it's not just what you know, it's what you do with what you know that's really important. Then we all know about the key competencies that Europe has also introduced, which have become part of the curriculum for a lot of countries, including Spain, where I'm based. And the push for life skills also comes from industry and the workplace. If you just look at these quotes from famous company leaders, and you see these words in blue come up time and time again. And I just want to show you briefly this news story, which I saw on Wednesday this week, which is basically saying that in Britain, a lot of young people coming out of school, but also coming out of university, are basically unemployable. And down at the bottom, the Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce said, well, he called for schools to help teenagers develop the soft skills demanded by employers and to prepare them for interviews. And they did a survey, and what the businesses really wanted, better communication skills, 88% wanted that. Improved literacy, 69%, numeracy, 64%, computing skills, and teamwork. So I think there's a real need for teaching life skills in secondary education. Now, when we were writing Beyond, we synthesized all the different life skills into 5 different areas, which appear on the life skills tree here. And we start off with know yourself down here, which is all about the positive thinking that we were talking about, being self-confident, respecting others, all the social skills, being aware of other people's needs, critical thinking in the get thinking section, communicate and cooperate, which covers working in teams, presentations like this, being flexible, and finally the classic school skills, study skills, time management, and financial literacy. So when we were creating the life skills lessons, we tried to make sure that we covered all these different areas. And I think I should just add at this point that although life skills are really important to teach all our students, I think they're particularly important for students with special needs as well. I mean, if you look at some of these areas, like self-confidence, the social skills, the study skills, teamwork, those are all areas that are really important for students with special needs. And a lot of the literature on life skills originated from work that people had done with students with special needs. So it's an area that's really important. Okay, now we're going to look at how you could maybe add some life skills to your everyday teaching. And this works particularly well if you're teaching functional or situational speaking skills. Now here's a classic scene that every course book has. It's a picture of some people ordering food at a restaurant. And the lesson aim here is expressing preferences and saying what you want to eat. So I'd like this, I prefer this, that kind of language. And you could probably just do this as a normal lesson, going through the conversation, the dialogue, and learning what you have to say. But there's so much more going on in this situation that you could exploit if you wanted to. If you wanted to just think, oh, well, maybe I'll give this little life skills focus so the students will go away with something more than just having said how to order some tomato soup. And I looked at this situation and came up with a few ideas of life skills that you could apply, you could add to this task. I just wonder whether you could just, in pairs or small groups, see if you could just think of some life skills tasks that you could use in this particular situation. I'll just put the tree back there so you can just be reminded of the different categories. But just see, sort of in 1 minute, if you can come up with any ideas of what you could do in the classroom with a situation. Okay, now I thought of eight possible life skills to use here because I had more time to think about it than you did. So I'm going to run through my 8 and then we'll see whether you thought of any others that we could add to the list. Okay, read the menu. Sounds very obvious, but menus are really hard things to read. They're really hard things to navigate and to understand how they actually work. When I arrived late at the hotel last night, I went to the restaurant to just try and get a snack, and it was so complicated trying to work out how to navigate the menu. I'm sure you know, I know that when anybody comes and visits me in Barcelona and we go out to eat, the first thing they say is, what do you recommend? What are you going to have? Giving recommendations is a really useful life skill, and it's based on your prior knowledge of what you know about the food, what you know about the restaurant, etc., and also what you know about the other person, which brings us on to be aware, which is being aware of the person that you're eating with. Do they have any special needs? Are they vegetarian, or are they allergic to any kind of food? That thing of just, even before you walk into the restaurant, you should be aware of that. I have a friend in Barcelona. I try not to go out for a meal with her because she just cannot make a decision of what to eat. And this is definitely a life skill I should teach her. But making decisions is a really important life skill. And in a restaurant situation, you often have to make snap decisions because you think, I'm going to have that. And then the waiter says, no, sorry, you can't have that. And you have to think quickly about something else that you want to have. So making those kind of decisions is a good skill. Yeah, let's not talk about money yet. The other thing I wanted to mention about making decisions was that idea that if you do go out for a meal, you have to choose a first course, a main course, a dessert. You have to balance what you eat. And you have to think, well, is it healthy what I'm eating? Then what am I going to have to drink with it? All those decisions are important. And yes, keep to a budget. Very important. Do you leave tips? I don't know, I was reading in the guidebook, it says, in Italy, you don't need to leave tips anywhere, but it's nice to do. Is that right? Is that... Communicate clearly and confidently. The more confident you are when you order your food in a restaurant, obviously the easier it is for the waiter, because the waiter's going to understand what you're saying much better than if you're not feeling confident about it. And also being polite and friendly. Remember, if you ever go to Britain, you have to say please and thank you every few seconds. Did you think of anything else? No? Okay. Well, I'm not saying, oh, you're doing that scene, teach all those life skills. But it's kind of just being aware that they're there and that you could maybe focus on one or focus on two and just add them so that the students learn a little bit more than the language. And how would you go about that? Well, I'm sure in the course book there's probably a little menu there that's graded so the students understand it. But why should they understand it? They're going to go to a restaurant, they're not going to understand the menu. So a good thing to do is to go online and download some menus. Look for menus that have real prices so students can think about prices. Menus that cater for different needs. Here there are dishes for vegetarian, there are gluten-free dishes, there are dishes for sharing. And talking of sharing, if you wanted to do something alternative, then the students could go online and try and find a restaurant that you could all go out to have an end-of-term meal at, which would cater for all the needs of the students in the class, in which case the students would have to find out about if any of the other students have special needs. There's one other thing about this situation that I think is really interesting, and that is that if you look at the picture, the boy with glasses he's looking at a bit of paper, he's pretending it's the menu. It looks like he's pointing at something. The boy playing the waiter is making a note, and he's looking over at what the other guy's writing. And the girl is listening. She's listening attentively to what's going on. They're acting. They're pretending that this is actually happening, that they're in the restaurant. And I think that often when we do conversations and dialogues and speaking activities in class, we tend to just say, okay, speak to each other and do that role play. But if you could get the students to actually act out the scenes, then it just makes it that more motivating for them, and also allows them to use body language, to use facial expressions, which also affect how you say something and how you speak. And I don't mean, you don't have to get students up to perform, but even just getting students to face each other when they're doing the activity instead of sitting side by side, or getting them to stand up and do it is a great way to try and encourage them to get into the scene. In Beyond, actually, on all the speaking pages, we use videos, and we use teenage actors, because then students can see how facial expressions, how body language, how it all combines together with words to convey meaning. And also we did it in a kind of workshop situation without hardly any props, so it sort of reflects the situation in a classroom as well. What do you think we're teaching? What language are we teaching here, do you think? Sports? But some sort of expressing moods. Yeah, in particular. Yeah. Here we are, we're teaching congratulations, commiserations, showing empathy, which is what we were looking at before. Here's one of the little dialogues. Which picture would you match that with? Yes, picture B. And why do we know? Because of the body language, because we can see it. I'd just like to show you this video, because it's quite short, but it's just so you can see that kind of everything that happens as soon as you get students to act rather than just speak. If it works.
No, that's not right. It should be our ball.
Bad luck. That was close. Don't get annoyed, or you'll get a yellow card.
This is just the best day ever.
You did a great job. I hate to say it, but you were better than me today.
Oh no, I really wanted to win this one. Well, congratulations.
Thanks. Better luck next time.
Oh no, that was terrible.
Never mind. Everybody has bad days. I know how you feel, but it's not that bad.
I don't believe it. I did it. I won.
Well done. Wow. That was just... You were amazing.
So I was just remembering that one of those scenes we had to film about 50 times because one of the actors just couldn't do it. And in these videos, there's actually quite a nice range of acting abilities, which also is good for the classroom, just so they don't think they have to be a fantastic actor to do it. Another fun activity is to make some emotion cards like this, which you can just feed to students when they're doing particular activities. So they have to speak using this mood, and then maybe the other students can try and guess what mood it is. But I think you often find that when students are pretending to be someone else, or to exaggerate, or not being themselves, it makes them much more confident and able to express themselves. Okay, so this was sort of how you could add a touch of life skills to your classes. Now we get to the interesting bit where can you make a whole class around a life skill? Now, the reason why we think this is a really good idea is because of the process of language learning. Because most learning takes place with meaningful communication. When a student's trying to get their meaning across, they realize that they're actually using the language that they've learnt in class. When they can actually say something and the other person understands them, then they feel more confident. And it's also good because they realize what they can't say. So it makes them think, I need to improve this, I need to improve that. It makes them want to learn more. I think that most teaching these days is communicative based. That's certainly what we found when we went watching classes in different countries. And there are two types. The PPP model, where the teacher presents some language, then the students practice it, and then there's some freer activity at the end of it. And I think that probably that's the most normal way that we teach, no? But the other option is doing task-based learning. Whoops. Where you give the students a task and then they have to use the language that they've got to try and accomplish the task. And the teacher there is observing, and the teacher is probably helping out if they have certain problems, or making a note of where they have difficulties. And then there's a feedback stage where the teacher says, well, how did you feel about that? How did it go? And what could you say? What couldn't you say? And maybe you'll work on a bit of language there. And then possibly there'll be a little work on the language, and then maybe the students will do the task again, having learnt what they've looked at. And in a way, this is a good way of learning, because after all, the CEF statements are all about what students can do, not what language they use to do it. So when we started writing the life skills lessons for Beyond, we thought they've got to be task-based lessons. And so we came up with a structure for the lessons that we thought would work, which was basically having an introduction where students would read or listen to something. Maybe it was a situation, a survey, a dialogue, just something that would make them aware of the life skill. Then there'd be a practical task which they would do in pairs or in small groups, where they would actually do something with that life skill. And then an important moment when they would reflect, and as a whole class, they would answer specific questions about what they think about what they've done. And then they would transfer that life skill to a different situation, so they can see how a skill they've learnt for one situation can be applied to other situations. We're just going to quickly look at two lessons, just so you can see how they work. And I think you're going to think that I'm obsessed with food, but this first lesson is about food. Can't get away from it. We've got 3 students here, and this is the situation. A group of British students are visiting your school. 3 of them are special diets. Read the information about them to the left, and complete their profiles with the correct phrase. So that's the task that just makes them aware of the life skill. They also look at some food, just to practice their food vocabulary, and also think, well, who can't eat this type of food? Then the practical activity they have to do is they have to imagine they're organizing a party for these British students who are coming to visit, and they have to make a list of the food that they're going to have at that party. And they have to include dishes so that those 3 students will have something to eat at the party, but also all the students in the class as well. So, as we said before, this is when they discover what their students can and what the other students can and can't eat. There's a bit of language support there as well. Then we have that reflection moment. So they discuss these questions with the whole class. And then they see if they agree or not with the statement that's in the life skills box. And then finally, here's the extension, the transfer exercise, where they're sticking with the party, but they're making a music playlist. So basically, they've got to decide what music they're going to play at the party. And again, they have to take into consideration everybody's favorite music. Okay, here's the other example, which is looking at learning styles. Starts off with a little questionnaire, which the students answer about themselves, about what they prefer doing in the classroom and out of the classroom. Then they look at very, very short definitions of the 3 main learning styles. And they kind of think, which one am I, based on how they've answered the survey. Okay, that's the first, number 1, number 2. Then number 3, they work in pairs and decide whether they agree or they don't agree. And then they look at typical classroom activities that they do, reading, listening, speaking, pronunciation, project work, role play, and they tick the ones that they like doing. And again, they work in pairs and they see which learning style those different activities are really good for, match best with. And again, they can also see whether they match up with the learning style from the survey. There's a reflection. Why are the students in the photo different colors? I don't know if you remember, but in the photo, each student was a different color, kind of representing that they all have different learning styles. They look at the life skills box, decide whether they agree or disagree. And then in this case, the extension is taking it out of the classroom and thinking about other things that they're good at. And they do this working in groups and see whether the results match with the learning styles again. Okay, those are two examples. And in the book, the life skills lessons go next to the functional speaking lessons. Because really, these are speaking lessons, but they're a really different way of speaking, because you're getting your students to really use the language in a way where they're expressing their own thoughts and giving their own opinions and talking about their own ideas. But I know from talking with teachers in Spain who are using the course that they really like these pages for that extra reading practice. I also want to point out that in the Mondadori edition, there are some extras. There's a life skills booklet, which has an introduction to life skills, has additional lessons, including school skills, and also suggested plans for tests and evaluation, because we often have to test and evaluate what our students do, and they might think, well, how do you do that with life skills? But in fact, it is possible, and it works really nicely. And also, it comes with a special needs booklet as well. Now, on our life skills pages, there are reflection points, and these are our reflection points. Do you think it's part of an English teacher's job to teach life skills? Would you consider adding more of a life skills focus to functional speaking lessons? Would you consider teaching dedicated life skills lessons? Do you think you could just briefly answer those questions again with the person next to you to see how you feel? Now, I'm sorry to rush you, but the school bell is going to ring any minute now. Is there anything anybody wants to say?
When we teach them to read a map, in order to teach them how to ask for and give directions.
Sorry, you didn't hear she saying that you do this already. For example, teaching a map, giving directions. Those kind of things.
Because we realize they don't know how to read a map.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even know how to write an address on an envelope because they don't use mail anymore.
Yes, someone was telling me earlier that they asked about postcards and nobody under 25 had ever sent a postcard or something. Yeah, no, good points. I'd like to point you in the direction of this website from Macmillan, which is their life skills website. It actually won an award this year. It's got lots of resources there. If you want, there are some feedback forms here for this talk, which would be great if you could fill in. And also, you could make a note here if you want to receive more information about Beyond when Mondadori publish it in January. That's my information at the top, and if you want to contact me for any reason, you can contact me through my website, which is up there.